Hello, welcome back to all. India braces itself for the landfall of Cyclone Munta, expected to occur in the late night of 28th of October, with more than 25 teams of NDRF deployed across the states of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Puducherry, and Tamil Nadu. The impact of Cyclone Munta is going to be moderate. Now, what is this Cyclone Munta about? Where does the name come from? And what is the geographical formation behind these cyclones in the region of Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea in the month of October, November, and December? In this particular video, we are going to talk about the formation of cyclone Munta, and at the same time, parallelly, there is another cyclone developing over Arabian Sea. So, why is it that so many cyclones are developing simultaneously? Where does the naming come from, and also what will be the impact when the cyclone makes a landfall? So to begin with, if you take a look at the satellite image of the winds, today we speak this is how the cyclones disturbance over the region of Bay of Bengal looks like. You can see with the image itself that the cyclonic winds are already bracing the land surface. The landfall is expected to happen between Kakinada and Machilipatnam coastline in Andhra Pradesh at late night of 28th of October and early morning of 29th of October. And this is the path which is going to be traced by the entire cyclonic disturbance. The formation of cyclone was somewhere closer to the Andaman Sea, but very much within the ambit of Bay of Bengal itself, and that is when carried by the permanent wind system. The cyclone moved in a direction of east to west. And now, why did the cyclone move in the direction of east to west? That is because here you have the presence of the permanent winds, which are also known as the trade winds. But then, after that, why did it move north? It should have simply struck the Tamil Nadu coastline. Why is it expected to make a landfall over the region of Andhra coastline? That is owing to the impact of the coral spores. The coral spores, just to remind you, is the apparent pores which act on any pre-moving objects owing to the rotation of planet Earth, due to which any wind, ocean current, aeroplane, missiles, and all these factors, when they move in the northern hemisphere, they bend to the right, whereas the same wind, the same ocean current, when they move in the southern hemisphere, they tend to bend to the left. So that is why the cyclone's original directions of movement is east to west could have been somewhat like this, but owing to the Coriolis effect, they are bending to the right. This is what is also known as the curving of a cyclone. But here, simultaneously, if you take a look at the Arabian Sea, you would observe another cyclonic storm is brewing up. The name has not been ascribed yet, but if this turns to be cyclone in a couple of days, what will be its name? We will find out in the later part of the video itself. Now, when we say Cyclone Monta, the name Monta is provided by the country Thailand, which basically means beautiful or fragrant flower. Now, the naming and the entire details of it that is associated under the age of WO and UNSCAP. These agencies, they help in providing the names. How we will take a look into, but before that we have to understand that these cyclones, they are not only common across Indian coastline. This is something which is experienced across the globe. Overall, cyclones are classified into two types. You have the tropical cyclones, and then you have the extratropical cyclones or temperate cyclones, as the name in itself tells you. Tropical cyclones, they tend to occur between the tropics of Cancer in the north and Tropic of Capricorn in the south. So very within the tropics of the world. Whereas extratropical cyclones, they tend to happen in the temperature regions, owing to the formation of front and other development. Now, in the tropical regions, the water temperature, as soon as it increases beyond a threshold of 26 to 27 degrees Celsius, a low pressure depression is created, and that attracts winds owing to the Coriolis effect. The winds when then starts to move in a circular fashion. When we talk about tropical cyclones, these are basically violent storms that originate over ocean across the globe, but there are named differently. If this kind of disturbance occurs in the northern Indian Ocean, they are known by the name cyclones themselves. Whereas if the same kind of event does occur in the Atlantic, they are known as hurricanes. That is why in the region of US, etc., southern US, for example, you will hear about the various different hurricanes hitting the coastline and causing destruction. Then, if the same event occurs in the region of Western Pacific and South China Sea, they are known by the name typhoon. And then in the Northern Australian region, they are known as the name of Willy Willy. So this is basically the geographical representation of the same phenomena, that is a tropical storm. But then why do we refer to it as a cyclone? A cyclone, the name is gained from the circular movement of the winds, which tend to happen. Now, this circular movement of wind happens because of higher temperature of ocean water. As I told you, whenever the ocean temperature increase behind, let's suppose 26 degree to 27 degree Celsius, in that particular case, a low pressure develops over the water body. Now, as this low pressure develops, it attracts winds from all directions. But you see, these winds, rather than meeting at the low pressure, aided by the Coriolis effect, Coriolis force, they tend to bend. How? So think about it. If taken a look from above a top view, imagine if winds are approaching from all the different directions. Now, thereby they bend to the right, because in the northern hemisphere, due to the Coriolis forces, they bend to the right. So here, if you are standing at the center of low pressure, and if you were to observe the movement of wind, here you would observe a kind of an anti-clockwise circulation. That is why the cyclone circulations are anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise when you talk about the southern hemisphere. If you take a look at the satellite image again, if you observe the satellite image, you will observe that there is a kind of an anti-clockwise circulation both in the Arabian Sea as well as the region of Bay of Bengal. Now here when we talk about this cyclone formation, there are certain conditions which need to be fulfilled. Just the presence of a higher temperature cannot trigger a cyclone. It can attract where fast moving winds, but not always a full fledged cyclonic development. So, what are the conditions which are absolutely necessary for a cyclone event to occur? So, first of all, you need a large sea surface with temperature higher than 27 degrees Celsius. Why? Because only when you have a large surface with a temperature higher than 26 or 27 degree, only then a low pressure gets created, a substantial low pressure, which can then eventually magnify itself into a full-fledged cyclone. Presence of the Coriolis force is a must, because without the Coriolis force, the winds will reach the region of low pressure, will rise up here itself from clouds and will cause rainfall in the same regions. There will be no circular movement of winds, whatever. So this is the reason why you never observe a tropical cyclone formation over the region of equator. Why? Because at equator the Coriolis force is zero. Coriolis force is equal to zero. So because the Coriolis force is zero, no bending of the wind. So no cyclone regardless of the temperature at equator. And this is also the reason why you will never find the case that a cyclone crosses from northern hemisphere to southern hemisphere, or vice versa, that a cyclone is formed in the southern hemisphere and then crosses over to the northern hemisphere. Why? Because again it will have to pass through the region of equator where the coral force is absolutely zero. Now, small variation in vertical wind speed, which is also referred to as wind shear. What does that basically mean? So that means a difference in wind velocity at different levels near the sea surface and at higher altitude as well, because imagine if you have the sea surface and the wind speed at the surface is low and the wind speed at the upper atmosphere is very high. In that case, what will happen? Any rising air, any cloud formation will immediately be taken away by the top wind. So you won't have a full-fledged development of the cloud system. Mind you, in the cyclonic formation, the cloud system because very now a pre-existing weak low pressure. If you already have a low pressure system, over the water body, then that can always intensify into a cyclone. If you don't have a pre-existing low pressure area, regardless of the temperature, oftentimes a cyclonic development does not happen. This is one of the reasons why we are experiencing multiple cyclones getting created in the month of October, and that is something which will be observed in the month of November and December as well. That is something we will discuss very shortly in the case of cyclonic season in India. But there one other factor that I want you to observe is the importance that cyclone in the tropics can only be formed over water body, not over land area. Here also in the necessary precondition, you would have observed large sea surface. So always water bodies are a must. Why? Because of the way in which the cyclone can form. Let's just take a look at it very quickly and let's just try to understand the simple basic of cyclonic formation. So you see, due to higher temperature, what you observe is that on the sea surface you have the formation of a low pressure. Now this low pressure will attract winds from all direction. As the winds are attracted from all direction, they start rotating around the low pressure and they also get heated up owing to the higher surface temperature. Now as they get heated up and they start rising, they will not rise vertically, rather they will rise in a spiral manner. As they rise in the spiral manner, they cool down. Upon cooling, these winds which are laden with moisture, because they have covered large distance over the sea surface, so these winds which are very moisture laden immediately start condensation and immediately start the formation of clouds. So that is when you will observe the formation of clouds. This is where the tropical cyclone does something very interesting. Whenever you have this cloud formation, there is a process which is known as condensation. After all, only because of the condensation of water vapor into ice particles or liquid water droplets, only then cloud formation will happen. But whenever this condensation process takes place, there is a release of heat. What heat is this? This is basically latent heat of condensation. Now that latent heat of condensation is a universal principle where whenever condensation happens in front of your refrigerator, in case of outside garden, whenever and wherever condensation happens, there is latent heat of condensation which is of always released. Now this latent heat of condensation, what it does, pushed by the winds from above, you have a sinking air column. Here pushed by the winds from above, this heat basically increase the temperature of the low pressure region. So in a way, this latent heat of condensation, what it does, it intensify the low pressure. As the low pressure gets intensified means what, you will have more winds are attracted. Now mind you, this is happening over the ocean. So when you have more winds which are attracted, means what, they will bring greater amount of moisture along with them. So more moisture supply means more condensation, that means further heat is released. So that means more moisture. When you have more moisture, that will lead to more condensation, and when you have more condensation, that means you will always have greater release of heat. So it is a kind of a feedback loop or a cycle that you observe in this game. Now whenever this event tends to happen means, what, okay, cloud formation becomes much more extensive. The cloud, they tend to speed out, but in the central region, because of higher temperature and because of the sinking air, you don't have any cloud form. That central formation which is free of any cloud has taken a look from above. This is what is also known as the eye of the cyclone. But on the sides of it, you will observe that the cloud thickness is very significant. So on the sides of it, this is what is referred to as the eye wall. So what happens? the entire disturbance gets created, and once the entire disturbance gets created, then they are carried with the help of permanent wind system in the tropics, which is a permanent wind system, trade winds, which move from east to west. So as these trade winds, they carry this entire system from east to west. Then let's suppose there is a land mass here, that is when the land gets impacted. This is an event which is also known as the landfall. But then how do you classify this? It is not the case that all the cyclone will have the same wind speed. So that is where what the Indian Meteorological Department also uses is a multiple subscales. So for example, whenever you have a wind speed of less than 31 kilometer per hour, it is a simple low pressure. When the low pressure intensifies, it becomes a depression. The wind speed increases. The further intensification of low pressure, you have a deep depression, 49 to 61 kilometer per hour wind speed. Then you have a cyclonic storm, that means 61 to 88 kilometer per hour wind speed. Then you have a severe cyclonic storm, 88 to 117 kilometer per hour. Cyclone Monta is expected to lie in this category of a severe cyclonic storm. When you have a super cyclone, that is when the devastation is very high and the wind speed are expected to cross 220 kilometer per hour. Now here also the cyclone category is put under different categories based upon the severity 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Again based on the wind speed. On the ground region, you have various color coded warnings which are issued. You have a green warning, means no severe weather expected. Then you have a yellow, which means be aware, remain alert and keep up to date with the latest forecast. Then you have orange, which is be prepared, and then you have the red warning. That means any catastrophic event can also tend to happen. Now this cyclonic disturbance, the entire disturbance which is created over the water body, this entire thing, let's suppose we consider the rising spiral of the winds and the formation of the cloud system era. Now this entire circular cloud system with a vacant eye, it approaches the land masses, aided obviously by the wind system. Now when it hits the land masses, then what will happen? Imagine this low pressure area hits the land mass, then the supply of moisture gets cut off, because where was the moisture coming from? Moisture was coming from the winds which were carrying the that water vapor as they were coming over the water body. But when the entire system hits the land mass, supply of moisture gets weakened and immediately starts getting curtailed. So, as a consequences, the formation, the cycle of latent heat condensation, everything starts to weaken, and that is when the cyclone starts to wait. Now, if let's suppose you are an individual standing on the ground, what is the weather condition that you will experience to being with when you start to see the clouds approaching? That is when you start experiencing very high velocity wind. That is what Andhra Pradesh coastline is experiencing as of now. Then you will have the entire cloud system along with the eye, which will come over the land area. Now the eye wall, because it has got large amount of clouds, often times 10 kilometer thick development of clouds. Now that will always end up including very heavy amount of rainfall along with thunderstorms and strong wind movement, which can cause flooding, which can also cause coastal inundations. Then as the eye comes over, eye doesn't have a cloud cover. This is when you will get clear sneaks, and the sun will appear again. It is at this particular stage where people they commit the mistake, where they think that the cyclone has actually passed over, but it is not the case, because once the eye crosses over the remaining portions of the clouds, that also hits huge amount of devastation and destruction thereafter. So that is the case of landfall. So whenever a landfall of a tropical cyclone will happen, it leads to dissipation of cyclone. However, you have certain exception. which were basically experienced earlier on the western coast. You had Cyclone 2, which landfall tended to intensify after making, because those regions of Gujarat and Maharashtra coastline previously had already received so much amount of rain that the air was already moist. That is why it incentivized period to a few years earlier. You had Cyclone Tetley, which basically braced the Odisha coastline, that also intensified after making contact because the region had already received so much amount of rainfall. Air had a lot of moisture, so if the land already is very enriched with the moisture, sometimes the cyclone can but otherwise the cyclone will always weaken and dissipate after making landfall. Now, in the coastal areas, the floodings they tend to occur what are known as storm surge. Now, in the case of these storm surges, you will observe that the strong winds they basically carry out larger waves and the tidal impact further inland land. So these storm surges they tend to occur because of very strong wind move. And what do they do? They basically flood the coastline. Okay, that is the basic event of storm surge. Many of the rivers which were draining into the sea in these areas, they are not able to empty the water because the sea level for a temporary duration tends to rise up. Through the rivers also start overflowing their banks, causing flooding in the interior region of the land as well. Now, how is the naming done by the way, and where did cyclone the name Monta arrived from? So basically, the naming of the cyclone is done by two agencies. You have Tropical Cyclones Warning Centers (TCWC), and you have RSMC Regional Specialized Meteorological Center. So as soon as the sea surface temperature starts to rise up, which is monitored on a day to day basis, the moment the sea surface temperature rises up beyond 26 to 27 degrees Celsius, it starts to be monitored by the TCWs. Now, the Tropical Cyclone Warning Center first of all observes that where the temperature is increasing and is there a possibility of this low pressure getting converted into a depression or a deep depression or a cyclonic storm. Once the tropical cyclone warning system center is convinced that this is not a simple low pressure, it can develop into a severe storm. That is when the information is passed on the regional specialized medical centers across the world. You have six different RSMCs which are located in order to monitor and basically provide the naming and all the various different sets of information in that local area as well. If you take a look at all these six RSMC Mohima takes a look and takes care of the naming of the hurricanes which develops in the Atlantic. Then you have RSMC Honolulu, which basically keeps a track of the typhoon development to some extent and also hurricane development across the region of Eastern Pacific. Then you have RSMC Nadi taking a look into storm specific, Southern Pacific. RSMC Tokyo takes a look at Western Pacific and the naming of the typhoons in Western Pacific and South China Sea. Then in Southern Indian Ocean, you have RSMC La reunion around the reunion Iceland, which are very vital geographical as well. Um, so there you have multiple recording stations and multiple monitoring stations as in the northern Indian Ocean. The RSMC is situated in New Delhi. It happens to be the case where RSMC New Delhi and IMD Indian Meteorological Department they share the same building, but they have different roles. RSMC New Delhi monitors all the cyclonic development either in Arabian Sea or the Bay of Bengal. Of now, the naming is a newer practice. Comparatively, around 30 to 14 years back, naming of cyclones used to be very abstract. For example, either a cyclone would be associated with the scientific name, or let's suppose a cyclone in its movement would destroy a boat called Antier. The cyclone would be named as Antier, or sometimes the cyclone would be given a feminine name just for the sake of it. Obviously, this create a lot of problems, and eventually you had countries which were impacted in the regions. They came together under the aegis of WHO, World Organization, and UNSCAP. Now they came together and they provide a list of names in the northern Indian Ocean. Earlier, you had 8 countries which had come together, and all of them had provided 8 names, giving a total of 64 names, which started being named from early 2000s all the way till around 2020 when the name got exhausted. That is when a new list was generated. In this new list now you have 13 countries in the northern Indian Oceans, and all of them have provided a list of 13 names, each giving a total of 169 names. Now how is the name arranged? So basically we have the countries and the names that they have provided, that is arranged in the raw in front of that country. For example, India has also provided a list of 30 names: Gati, Tage, Morasu, Ag, Om, Jahar. All these names are provided by India. So, like that, you have 13 countries of the northern Indian Oceans which are arranged alphabetically, and the names that they have provided that is arranged in the raw in front of them. The naming of cyclone is done one by one, picking up from the list in a columnar fashion. For example, the last cyclone which occurred in the region was named as Cyclone Shakti. So this cyclone which is developing in the Bay of Bengal, that is named as Cyclone Monta. Now the disturbance that I had now shown you in the Arabian Sea, if that develops into a full-fledged cyclone, it will be named as Cyclone Senar, which is provided by UAE. The next cyclone, whenever it will occur in Arabian Sea or Bay of Bengal, it will be named as Cyclone Dua. The next cyclone, whenever it will occur, that will be named as Cyclone. Watch out for the cyclone Arnab and its destructive power as well. Now, having said that, what are the cyclonic season in India? Why are we experiencing cyclone? When we say that a higher sea surface temperature warning, etc., is required, why do we experience cyclones in the month of October, November, and December? So in India, you basically have two cyclone seasons. First is the form of month of April, late April, May, and almost till mid June. That is the first cyclonic season, and then from the month of July, August, September, you don't experience cyclones at all. The again in the month of late October, late to mid October, November, and up till mid December, you again experience cyclones. Now, why is that the case? Because due to heating of the sun, the intertropical convergent zone, that is the low pressures or the thermal equator that advance over India and then again retreats from over the portion of India. So if you can take a look at the background image on the screen, so in the month of April, May, and June, the low pressure systems that travels over India like this. So as a consequence, it has got a low pressure lying over Arabian Sea as well as Bay of Bengal. Now mid you, one of the necessary precondition for the formation of cyclone was a pre-existing low pressure system. So that pre-existing low pressure system with an average temperature higher than 27 degrees Celsius can always trigger cyclone. Then after the monsoon retreat has begun, post 17th of September is when the retreat of general tends to happen. That is when this IT season then starts basically retreating from India, and it retreats in the month of late October, November, and December. And this is the time when the low pressure lies over Arabians in Bay of Bengal again. So that is the reason why in the month of October you are observing the case of cyclone Munta in the region of Bay of Bengal, and simultaneously and the disturbance is getting created over the region of Arabian Sea. These incidents and events occur more frequently in the month of October, November, and December as well, but the reasons that they impact will also be different depending upon the seasons. For example, if you have the cyclone occurrence in the month of April, May, or mid June, the region impacted will be mostly Odisha, West Bengal, and Bangladesh, because that is how the wind movement is. and in the later months, late October, November and December, the region impacted in Bay of Bengal are Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu primarily. So that basically brings us to the end of the discussion, and overall a quick recap what we have discussed: why the name Cyclones Monta provided by Thailand. We have taken a look at it, that what if a next cyclone occurs, why will it be named like that, under what process, the formation of a tropical cyclone, the features, the aspect of coastal flooding, the impact of on life, and the entire process of RSMC, number of RSMC, and the process of well and the cyclonic season of India.